Welcome back to episode number 3 of the Adventurer Podcast, where we share the missional story of Christ through the people of First Baptist, taking his name to the nations for the glory and the renown of King Jesus. Today on the podcast, we have two incredible human beings, Jonathan and Hannah Vanderpool, who are great friends, who are also great adventurers. We have traveled the world. Actually, the four of us in this room have traveled the world together.
We made some awesome memories. And I will say that I've been out of town, and I did tell Alex that he was not allowed to record this without me. So I'm very excited for this episode.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Adventurer Podcast. We are excited to hear a portion of your story. And we were talking about this before we started recording. This will probably be a multi-part, maybe a mini series with the Vanderpools. It'd be great.
Sounds good.
Wow.
I don't know if you want a mini series, but
It'd be
News
fantastic.
to me.
It'll still be great.
It sounds great. Okay. All right.
It'd be fantastic. So Jonathan and Hannah spent time overseas with their family, serving with the International Mission Board there in South Asia. And so our goal today is just to tell the story. Our goal of the Adventurer Podcast is to tell the missional story of First Baptist Church as it reaches into the globe for the glory of Jesus' name, connecting the pew to the nations, all for the glory of Jesus. So what led you all, because you're not from South Asia, you're from, well, maybe, no, I'm kidding. What led you all to South Asia to start with?
I think one of the first things that led us there was that we were in a small group at that time, and two of the other couples in the small group were actually in the International Mission Board process to become missionaries. And so there was a lot of conversation about, should you serve? Should you not serve? What is what's holding you back? What are you afraid of? Do you trust that the Lord can guide you in this kind of process? And so I think the initial start of this was just the influence of other people whom we were in a small group with.
Wow. Yeah, we had 3 little kids at the time. I do believe probably our youngest was 2. And maybe our oldest, well, they're stair-steps, so probably 5.
Yeah.
And we had also been reading Let the Nations Be Glad.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that sort of some of our thoughts went from the abstract and theoretical of, yes, this is a good thing to do. Yes, we're called to be workers. We're called to share the light that is within us, and went from that to like, okay, well, what about us? And initially, we didn't have South Asia on our radar. Initially, we kind of opened up the entire map of the world and said, where would you have us, Lord? And I think a lot of people talk about like the call, and it can sound very mystical, and it can sound very sort of heady. But for us, it was very much making pros and cons lists and looking at our family and praying through stuff and just saying, not there. Okay, probably not there. God's going to have to really make it clear. That's an X. And we kind of got down to a few places and started putting some feelers out with people that were already working there and hearing from them. And it's very interesting because there's job descriptions that you can read through, and you can sort of say, oh, that seems like, I could do that.
Yeah, this was back in the days when they used to post all the positions throughout the world, and you could go in and actually research the ones that you found interesting. That no longer exists. Yeah. It's also interesting because South Asia was not our first choice. In fact, we had locked into a choice that was in Africa, but because it just seemed to fit the needs of our family the best and seemed like, okay, this looks like a really good fit for us. And Hannah actually felt uneasy about it. It was just like, I'm just not sold that that's exactly where we're supposed to be. And so we had locked in, we were going, it was going to be a really interesting place. And she said, why don't you just look at the list again and check and see if there's something else open? And sure enough, like I actually think it was the top choice at that time. It had just been listed, and it was South Asia.
Yeah.
And then there were so many connections for why that was the place we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing.
One of the things we thought about in answering that particular call was that our middle son he's very fair skinned, very fair hair, and he had always been a kid who would overheat. And he would just sort of wilt. And at that time, we did not know what we now know about our two boys, is that they do have a syndrome which affects them by, in a variety of different ways, and I won't go into too much about that. But we didn't know it at the time. I just suspected that it would not be a good situation for us to be in a very hot climate. So one of the job descriptions had us in a place where it was very cool and seasonal, in a mountainous area. And we sort of said, like, in a very practical way, like, this is probably the place we're going to pursue because we have this issue with one of our kids. So again, people think, and for some people it is this way. You think, like, when I was 12 years old, I had this people group on my mind, and from that time on, I just knew. That was not like how it was for us.
No, in fact, for me, just on a personal note, for this whole process of being called to serve, I always thought of people who were serving overseas as being kind of weird.
Yeah,
and
sure.
it was because when they would come back to churches and talk, they seemed odd, and their kids were kind of weird and unsocialized. And so I thought, is that really what I want for my kids? The answer is no.
Yeah.
I don't want to stick out like that. I had done short term, and I had served in those ways, but yeah, the idea of long term was one of those things that for me took me a while to get on board. And now on the other side of things, it makes perfect sense why people who have served overseas, especially for long periods of time, come back and don't feel normal. They don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that happened to us, and I now have a lot of sympathy for those people.
Sure.
Doing that. But that was a hard thing for me to get past in the beginning, which is why it took longer than it should have probably for us to actually officially say yes.
It's so true that, when you consider what you're talking about, how you come back and you don't feel normal. And as we get more into your story, we'll hear that once you're over there, you don't have a choice but to engross yourself in the culture, minus everything that is not of the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Like there, you don't have an option. If you're going to survive, you have to live like the people there live in most cases is very different from what we're used to.
Yeah, I liken it to have a baby. You may have the baby and you may look normal after that, and you may go back to normal. And maybe someone seeing you on the street would never know that you had a baby, but you know you had a baby and you are changed forever. And there's no going back. So there's only this new reality. And so that's a metaphor a lot of people can relate to, but like it changes you. And even if other people can't see that change, it's there. You know it's there, right? And so we definitely did experience that. And, just like having a baby, like it is for the better. The change is good. But it does separate you in some ways from people who don't understand what that's like. Just because you feel like I think for our kids, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but when we came back, very much felt like, well, this is interesting. I look like a lot of other people here, but I'm not like a lot of other people in my heart. My life has been like Alice in the Looking Glass. Like I've entered another world and have come back, and I'm different. Whereas in our other context, we looked different. And so it was very easy to be like, we feel different because we are different. We look different, culturally different. But being back in that familiar context was actually really hard for the kids.
Yeah.
What was it like when you brought the short term and you realized, okay, the long term could be a reality? What was that initial reaction like when you learned? Was it a trigger in your mind? Was it a?
Yeah, for me, I guess it goes to the part of the story is that I had actually stopped the process twice.
Really?
Because I was afraid.
Okay. In the process, it's a long process.
It is a very long
Long
process.
process, yeah.
And honestly, it can happen quickly for some, and it can happen really long and drawn
Sure.
out. And there's a number of reasons why it stops and starts
yeah.
and things like that. But for me, it really boiled down to a sense of fear. I was afraid to take my family into an environment that I had very little to no knowledge or control of.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even exactly sure that, is this even the right thing to do?
Sure.
And so because of that fear, I kept looking for reasons why we needed to say no, why we needed to pull ourselves out of that process. And actually, in the beginning stages, was hoping that there would be some shutting of a door or some opening of something else that made more sense.
So relatable.
And yet, it never came. And
Yeah.
I will always remember, this is really essential to my part of this story and my life, is that the Lord really, really impressed upon me one night that this is what he had for me, and I had a choice. And it would not change his love or his protection or any promises that he has ever made to me.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to ask me or bring this up anymore. It was kind of like either do it or don't.
Gotcha.
But this is it.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there just thinking to myself, what do I fear more? Do I fear obeying the Lord
Yeah.
or the Lord going quiet?
Ooh.
And I think for me it boiled down to I am so afraid of the Lord going quiet or moving on from something that is clearly being put before me
Yeah.
that I was like, I can't do that. That scares me more.
Yeah.
And so I remember that night because I had to, I said, Hannah, I need to talk to you. And
Well, he put the kids to bed and he made decaf and he was like, we need to talk. And I was like,
Yeah.
what?
yeah, that is
I
not
was like,
usually that is usually
no.
the precursor to a very intense and maybe uncomfortable
Like,
conversation.
doesn't, yeah, like not at all.
But what
normal.
it really was that it was, I really felt the Lord impress upon me that this is what I have for you. You'll either obey me or you won't. And so that's why the call
Yeah.
that some people talk about looked very different, at least on my side, because I felt like it was a pure out obedience. Are you going to obey
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah.
And so we did. Yeah. And going from that short-term mentality, it was amazing because then after we did say yes and after we did officially just two-footed get into the process,
Yeah.
3 or 4 other things opened up.
Really.
Job opportunities.
Job opportunities, things that would have kept us home.
Yeah.
And I, without a shadow of a doubt or hesitation, looked at them and was like, nope.
Wow.
Things that a year ago he would have been
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think I want to do this,
Absolutely.
right? But then at that time it was
Yeah.
like, nope.
And I was likened back to a Bible study we had done earlier, and I can't remember the name, but the guy was tasked with rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. And
Nehemiah.
the people are yelling for him to come down, talk about this, and they're just trying to distract and keep the wall from being rebuilt. And Nehemiah, says, I have important work to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be bothered with that. This is my work. And I remember thinking to myself, I can say no to these things with unadulterated confidence because the Lord has made it abundantly clear
That's good.
that I have work to do.
That's good.
And so, yeah, it was like once that turned, there was no question about it. And then you get handed the one-way tickets and you're going to meet somebody in an airport with a sign that has your last name that you've
That
never
you've
seen.
never met that person.
Thankfully, South Asia allows for people from our country to stick out. So it wasn't as hard to find that one person, that dot of of light color in the middle of all of that brown, and so it was quite an amazing, eye-opening experience. So,
and I will say, after sort of that last hiccup of we know we're supposed to do this. Man, the process just went so fast after that. We had to tell parents, we had to tell people, we had to put in resignations, we had to prepare the kids as much as we could. They were
sold
like,
our house. We
sold our house. We got to the place where we had no outstanding debt at all. And then I remember saying to the kids, okay, you can pick one stuffed animal. You can have your blankie, and you can pick a rock from the front of the house, whatever you want. Someone had told me that. I was like, you can pick a rock. The kids are like, a rock? But we went to South Asia with, am I right? 9 suitcases?
9 suitcases and 5 backpacks. Yeah.
And that was all our earthly possessions at that point. And that's a family of 5. I am a minimalist in my heart, and I routinely, all through my wife and motherhood, have been a person that's been like, have you used that in 1 year? Have you cared about that in a year? Have you worn that? It's going to Goodwill. So for me, I wasn't that sad, but I think people around us that loved us were really sad for us because we didn't have. And we came back after years with 9 suitcases because we gave everything to other people. So I don't say that to pat ourselves on the back. I'm saying not everybody does that. We had friends who had crates shipped and furniture and whatever. We just didn't. We were like,
and that area of the world doesn't not necessarily accommodate shipping.
Well, at that time we didn't.
At that time,
we didn't know.
There was we really didn't have much of an option. But when people hear that everything we downsized an entire family of 5 and a household to 5 backpacks and 9 suitcases. That's a big change, and to come back with that was an even bigger change.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
How was that? Let's talk about family dynamics. You got 3 kids. You said 2 to 5, right?
Yeah.
2 to 5, and you tell them, "Hey, go pick your favorite stuffy, your favorite blankie, and a rock." I can't imagine. I've got 3 kids, 10, 6, and 5. And if I said, "Hey, go pick out your favorite X, Y, and Z," they'd look at me like I had 4 heads.
Yeah.
How was that?
Well, by the time we were ready to actually do this, I believe our youngest was 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we had a 5.5-year-old and one that was almost 7. So everybody was at an age at that point where we could say, at least, in kid words, we actually cannot take anything else.
Yeah.
So we're giving you this chance so that because these things actually don't matter. And look, mommy and daddy are also getting rid of a ton of stuff that we care about. But the truth is, we have each other, and there will be new adventures, and this is just stuff.
Yeah.
And it's okay. So I think we tried to sort of say, because we had a big yard sale. I mean, they got to be a part, for better or for worse, of seeing us let go of things. And I think it just sort of became like, this is just a fact. It's just is what we're doing. I don't know if anyone got super upset except for the blankie thing.
There's a funny
which is
story
a
to
side
that.
story.
Yeah.
And I will just say, eventually the blankies didn't even make it. We didn't even take those because they were connected to thumb sucking. And we actually,
I gotcha.
at one
Yeah.
point, I scooped them up when the kids weren't around, and I threw them away, as sad as that is, hardcore. And then we were sitting at the dining room table, and I remember saying, "Hey guys, I just need to tell you that your blankies have gone to blankie heaven." And our middle kid, this is just vintage him, he's 5.5. He's like, by blanky heaven, do you mean the dump? And I said, yes.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So yes, they were mad, really mad about that, but they
But you
survived.
know, the other thing was I never really felt a whole lot of pushback. I think they saw us embracing the realities of this is an adventure that we're
Yeah.
getting ready to do. I think them seeing us have to give away a lot of things. But I don't ever want to discount the fact that the Lord just prepared them
It's true.
for the reality.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I think that their lack of caring for even their own stuff is because he had prepared them that this is an adventure. I'm not just calling your parents. I'm
Yeah.
calling you as a unit to go.
Yeah, so often we hear, especially with families, talking about mom and dad,
Yeah.
their preparation, what God is doing in and through them. But we never talk about the kids. We never talk about the rest of the family. And to hear that the Lord was preparing them at the same time He was preparing you all, while the blankies did go to the dump, they could get mad about that, but He was still working in and through that season of life to prepare them for what was coming.
And church members were coming up and saying, "Are you excited about this? Are you
Oh, yeah.
excited about that?"
Yeah.
So I think it kept it in the front of their minds that, oh, wow, this is something different.
Yeah.
This is something that not everybody's doing.
Sure.
So this is kind of, in a way, exciting.
Yeah.
And we tried our best to say, you're going to be on an airplane. You're going to get to watch movies.
Yeah.
It is really, I do have a funny side story. My sisters and I are very close. I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and we lived very close to my middle sister who has kids the same age as ours. So it was very hard for her emotionally, obviously, to think about losing our family because we were like best friends.
Yeah.
And our kids are best friends. And at one point, my sister said to Grace, who was 4, Grace, how are you feeling? And we always assume, that kids have feelings that they maybe don't have. And she was like, how are you feeling about this move and everything? And Grace said, well, I'm going to be sad to say goodbye to Mimi and Papa and you. But the airplane has these little trays and they bring you food and you get to watch a movie and play games. And Rachel, my sister, was just like, she had tears in her eyes, but then she just started laughing. She was like, oh my gosh. I mean, this is just what it is to be 4.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I'm going to be sad, but there's little trays and that's really
right.
fun. So, it was a good age to bring kids because they were pretty flexible.
That's so good. What was it like? What was it like raising children on the field?
I think that, just what was a normal day like, it changed every second. I mean, there wasn't a 9 to 5, this is what every day looked like.
Yeah.
Where we were always rudely awakened by
The call to prayer.
by calls to prayer and other forms of worship that were blasted
On loudspeakers.
on distorted, very, very distorted loudspeakers that seemed to be pointing directly at our home. So that was a constant. It never changed.
Yeah.
It was there. But, kids are kids.
Yeah.
They want to play. They want friends. They want activities.
Yeah.
They want to go. They want to do. The issue with our specific assignment was that it was in a mountain area, and so it was kind of isolated.
Okay.
So difficult to get in and out. So traveling was not easy going from where we were.
Sure.
But the Lord provided amazing amounts of kids in and around our building that allowed our kids to have friends. In
Sweet.
fact, some of them became what our kids actually thought of as their best friends. And so there was places to play. There were things to use and and of course my wife was homeschooling the kids at that time, so they had the routine of we're going to get up and we're going to do our school for the day, but we also knew that life was full of interruptions.
Yeah.
And so our best laid plans would be interrupted quite often. And so I think Hannah knows about the day-to-days with the kids. I did too, but a lot of times what happened was I would be pulled away to go and do things that were requirements of the job. And so, yeah.
Well, it was good because I was actually homeschooling kids before we moved. So the idea that you have a routine but not a schedule was already deeply ingrained in our family. We have rhythms to the day. We know what we want to accomplish. But, you're dealing with little kids. So even in the best laid plans, you learn to go, well, we'll see. But the funniest thing that would happen is that our neighborhood kid who went to a little private school, wore uniforms and whatever, would come to the door. He lived in our building, and he'd ring the doorbell, and I'd have to consistently be like, nobody, not right now, we're doing school, which in South Asia at the time we were in doing school, I mean, the idea that we were teaching our kids was absolutely foreign, so strange. Yeah. They didn't know why we didn't put our kids in a local school. We didn't because our options at the time, we weren't comfortable with the kind of discipline that they used if the kids didn't perform well in school. And so we chose not to do that. The homeschooling was normal for me, but just add in the call to prayer, monkeys on our porch, the power going out, water going out, neighborhood kids climbing the stairs and ringing the doorbell. We did have an earthquake at one point.
We did have a riot.
We had a riot at the hospital next door. They were threatening to burn it down, so we had to stay in that day. So there were plenty of things that made it like, whoa, this is an adventure. But I have talked to the kids a million times since then.
Yeah.
And we took a lot of pictures and made a lot of scrapbooks, and we talk about it, and they say, we just accepted that is life. That is normal life. They didn't have a template to compare and be like, well, it should be like this. Why is it not like, it just was like, this is life. And I think they were watching our reactions.
Absolutely.
And so we did a lot of smiling and let's pray about it to their faces. And then sometimes behind closed doors, I was like, I'm dying. I just want to also express that workers like this are normal people. Yeah. They are not super Christians. They are not above the daily struggles that people have. Yeah. They have marital spats. Their kids are bratty.
They think horrible thoughts about the culture that they're in.
No, on bad days. No, I shouldn't. What? Slap.
It happens. It happens. It's because we're all human beings being led by the Lord to serve in our different contexts with our different stories. But it doesn't change the fact that we can look at something and go, that's bad.
Yeah. And we're sinners.
We're sinners. And so
I think people put workers on a pedestal. And I think sometimes churches do that. And on the face of it, it seems like, they're just wanting to encourage those people. But I do think subtly it's also a way of separating yourself from that potential call when you just see someone as being like, well, you're super, you're extra this, you're better than I am. You're just meant to do it and not me. And while it seems like it's a compliment to the worker, it's actually sometimes, not always, but sometimes a subtle way of excusing your own self because you're telling yourself, I'm just in a different category. And the truth is, if you knew how your workers were absolutely like everyone else, you might be like, well, okay, then why am I not called? If it doesn't take super talents and super spirituality and a PhD, then yikes. That means that I could be called. And so I think that whole putting people on a pedestal is an unhealthy thing we do, and people aren't doing it to be whatever. No. But I also think it means that workers can't always be honest about how they're really doing because they feel like they have to project a certain image, and they have to say, it's good, it's all good, and sometimes it's really not good, and God is faithful, but that's just reality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's challenging because we, from this side, I'm the only one in the room that has not spent time on the field. I've spent time short term, not like the three of you. And yeah, I'll be real honest. I do put you all on pedestals because I know.
You should see the
bad.
faces in this room right now.
But I did because I really thought that you were in ignorance. I thought you were superhumans. You were super Christians. But what you've done is you've just said, no, I'm a normal human being created in the image of Christ Jesus, who is a sinner in need of the great Savior. And the only thing that's different is I've put my yes on the table, and this particular yes meant that I was going to pick up and move somewhere.
Yes, that's right.
And the
so,
truth is, there's a lot of people who will disagree with you making that decision that you feel God calling you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they have lots of reasons why. It reminds me of a conversation I had, and the person that I was talking to just felt like, who are you to go
yeah,
and tell them that they're wrong?
Them being wherever you
being
go.
wherever you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And I think this is helpful to remember that I am no better than anyone in this world is,
yeah,
because they're all image bearers of the Lord.
yeah,
The only thing I have to offer is what I believe to be is true and what the Scripture tells me. And so I'm going with only one thing, and that is the gospel. And whether they choose to believe that or not is completely outside of my control. And I think that's a good thing to remind ourselves, because it doesn't matter if I'm doing that in South Asia or if I'm doing that here in Kentucky or right across the street. The only thing you have is the gospel, and whether they choose to believe that or not is completely in the hands of the Lord.
yeah,
And then it's also helpful to remember that, especially people who are very close to you, they know who you are.
Yeah.
They know who you were. So they know all of your
That's right.
all of your imperfections and your sinfulnesses and your if that's not it, that's not even a word. But again,
It is today.
they know all of these things. And so it's really, I think it was really important and helpful to me going to remind myself, I can't save anyone.
that's so good.
And we had to have this conversation even amongst ourselves, just looking at the pure poverty and devastation of some of the places we were in. I can't save you. Jesus can.
Yeah,
I can't. And the other thing that feels really burdensome when you're serving overseas is you see the vastness of the lostness
Yeah.
and the pain and the suffering. And you realize that, or you feel that you're just a drop in a bucket.
Well, because you are.
Because you are.
yeah,
And yet, we've been given this amazing truth and this amazing story that can be life-giving to whoever hears it and accepts it. So
Yeah.
it's a really humbling and difficult thing
Well,
to
and
grasp.
two, when we talk about the gospel is the primary change agent of any culture. That doesn't mean we don't address physical needs. It doesn't mean that we didn't try to make life better in a material way where we were. We did.
yeah,
But because we were in a place that was so poor, we had to deal with things that our friends in Western Europe did not, our worker friends. They were dealing with a lot of what we would consider to be hardness of heart culturally.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have a spiritual discussion unless you're talking about the New Age or something like that.
Sure.
They had a lot of material possessions. They were doing well, much like a lot of us here. But they didn't really sit around going, this is the 16th beggar kid that has come to my door and my children are watching me. And when we have our Bible time in the morning and we talk about the Good Samaritan and we talk about turning the other cheek and giving what you have and not turning people away. And then I cannot give anything else to this child. And my kids are going, but that kid's my age. Those are the kinds of very real things we had to deal with in our context. On the other hand, people were very willing to have spiritual conversations. And so, they might argue, but they wanted to talk about ultimate reality and karma and, all these different concepts. So that part wasn't so hard, but dealing with how do we live out hands and feet our faith when we have limited resources, that was a challenge because we know we're not just allowed to just wash our hands like the Bible talks about when we see someone in need and we say, be well, be warm, brother. We don't have the right to do that. And yet the needs, as John said, were so vast that I had a conversation with the Lord one night. I was sitting in my bed. We had a construction crew that was working on the building in front of where we were staying. And they were in a tent setting, and there was a woman with a baby. She was nursing. She was very, very poor. She belonged to someone on that crew, but she was clearly being treated very badly. And at one point, I made the decision to give her actual rice and water. I got this feeling that she was basically on her own. And I tried in my very broken local language usage to say that I'm doing this because of Jesus, because he loves you and he sees you. And there were people that came out of their houses watching the white woman do this, right? And it already was a fraught situation and tense and okay, I understand what I'm doing here looks really bad because there is such a thing as rice Christians. They call them people who say they're going to convert because they really need food and they want whatever you have. And so they'll say whatever. So I have all this, I'm an overthinker and it's all in my head. And then I'm like, I don't even care. I'm giving her as a woman, as a mother, I'm giving her something and I don't care what anybody thinks. And maybe I'm doing wrong and I don't know. Well, I can't get into it. It would take way too long. It was a very dramatic story. And one morning, we all woke up, and she was basically wailing because that tent community had left her there and taken her kid. And so she was there by herself. They left the newborn with her, but there was a toddler that was hers as well, her son. And the dad, I guess, or whoever was in the community just took that kid. And I remember having a conversation with God where I was like, why? And I'm just going to be real. Why do you let things like this happen all the time? And why do I have to see it? And I felt him impressing in my heart, not in an audible voice. Gotta always give that little caveat. He was impressing on my spirit, basically, you do not love these people more than I do. It was like a rebuke. You do not love them more than I do. And in that moment, I felt like Job being told, I'm not giving you an answer. I'm asking you, were you here at the beginning? Did you create the world? It was an attitude adjustment for me because I was like, I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to survive this environment. If I am pressing into these questions and I develop a complaining spirit towards the Lord and I start thinking hard thoughts towards him and I start asking, why do my kids have great tennis shoes and that kid is covered in boils? And my kids are trying to think of ways they can give that kid something, and what they can give him is some janky little toy. It's not going to solve anything. So it was heavy. So our time there was a beautiful time, but it was heavy a lot of the time because we were dealing with the reality of the hurting world. And I will say, the reality of a hurting world is as I said before, when you have a baby, and even if your stomach gets flat again and you're lucky enough to have that, you will always have those stretch marks on your stomach. And every time you get changed, you look at those stretch marks, they are a reminder. The suffering world leaves stretch marks on your soul. and it will never not bear those marks again. And one of the reasons that I grieved coming back from that very difficult place was that the Lord had been so near and so present to us and had answered so many miraculous things that I was afraid that I would go back to my self-sufficient life here and I wouldn't need him anymore, or I wouldn't think I needed him, and I just wouldn't be able to hear anymore. It was a very real fear. So it felt the way that John was scared to say yes, we were scared to return. It was like we had a total like character arc where we had started out afraid to do this thing, and then as we were getting ready to come home, we were scared to come back because we just didn't know if our hearts would ever be the same. And what if God was distant? And what if he was quiet? And theologically, we knew all the answers to that, but we were afraid because we had seen really amazing things happen. So,
Yeah. And you also, when you come back, even though we were able to complete our term of service, there's a feeling of if you don't come back and then return to go back
right away,
you can feel a sense of, did I fail? Did I, are we quitting? You're just left with a lot of questions and insecurities on top of trying to readjust to a world. Whereas, you're being welcomed back because, of course, our families were overjoyed that instead of having to, think in terms of 11 hours behind or ahead, we're right there, And so for them, there was joy. But for us, there was a sense of joy. Oh, I get to see the people I love so dearly in the world.
Definitely.
But when you go and you live with people for that long in that kind of intensity, and I will say it's not a normal 3 years that we spent.
It's dog years.
Yeah, it felt double, maybe triple that, and the intensity by which you live and you connect with people.
Yeah.
That's just something I don't know if we have that here in the United States as much, but it feels like that over there. And so when you're saying goodbye to them, a lot of people can't understand why you would feel genuinely heartbroken to leave when they see a place that looks so poverty-stricken.
Mm-hmm.
But you do, and you're heartbroken that you have to walk away.
Yeah.
And I will add that when we were getting ready to go, our kids had to be told you can only take these things. But when we were getting ready to leave, our kids were saying, and this sounds made up, they were saying, what things can we give to our neighbor kids so they'll remember us?
Yeah.
So we didn't have to tell them, you can only take this, you can only take that. By the end of it, they were like, if I leave this Calvin and Hobbes book on the front step, do you think it will still be there when he gets back from school? And we drove off, and we had just allowed it. Our kids had just left items in people's front porch that could have gotten stolen. I don't even know. But we got in the car and we drove off, and we never knew if they got them or not, the stuff. But that was the heart change that our kids had had. Yeah. And so, again, to the point of like, can God work in a 5-year-old's heart? Yes, he can.
Yeah.
Yes, he can. So I think sometimes we're so busy trying to protect our kids from hard things that we leave God out of the equation. We think, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. He's actually the perfect parent. And if he calls you, he's calling them. Which means that even if something bad happens, right? And bad things did happen.
Yeah.
Even if something bad happens, it will be part of their testimony. It will be part of their story. And so,
I think if our kids were sitting right here, they would say the same thing because this experience has become such a part of it's almost like their DNA. It's just in them, and they feel forever changed. And so I think they would say the same thing. It has done a dramatic and amazing thing to change them for the good.
We have 2 kids now graduated from college, and one that's working her way through. And it's funny because they have told us stories about how they don't even think about it. It's like their lizard brain just goes for the international student, like just like sort of like just drifts over there.
Yeah.
They just want to have a conversation. And so I do think that their view of the world is much bigger, and they just don't think of people in terms of these narrow categories and characteristics, and these people are this way, and these people are. They don't really seem to have that as much. So I'm thankful for that. I'm proud of that.
What would you say to the family that's considering putting their yes on the table?
I would say, as a mom, it is okay to put your yes on the table and then to get out your notebook and start thinking through the realities of your family.
Yeah.
Do you plan to keep on having kids? What kind of schooling are you comfortable with? The reason I say that is that it might sound more godly and spiritual to say, it doesn't matter. But the truth is, God has given you the family and the circumstances He's given you, and those are to be stewarded.
Yeah.
So I think of that as part of your talents that you've been given, right? That you're supposed to do something with. And so that means you prayerfully consider what would be best. You can't know, honestly, all the things you don't know. We certainly didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Scripture says you don't build a building without first counting the cost. I think your yes should always be on the table, but you should always count the cost.
Yeah.
And
so
look
what does
at
that
what
mean?
your realities
Yeah.
are. Do your children have medical concerns? Then you probably need to be in a bigger city where they can get medical care. These are all things to consider. Also, not every place in the world requires you to homeschool. A lot of families put their kids in local schools because they want their kid to learn a language, or they believe their kid can handle it. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't.
Some
It's
families
okay.
are called to places where the only option is boarding school, so they have
Yeah.
to make the decision that we're going to
Later
get there,
on.
and you're going to get on an airplane, and you're going to go to a school in this area while we serve over in this area.
And we were not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
We have some very dear friends who did it, and it worked beautifully for us. I was like, my head's going to pop off. I can never do that. But again, it's okay. And when I think too, it's important to know when you think about what a worker is, you need to put your own face. Look in the mirror, because they are as diverse
Oh, yeah.
as anyone anywhere. And we can say that because we had lots of big meetings with lots of people. And we did say, it's the Muppet Show here, y'all. I don't know who's Gonzo or who's Piggy or Kermit, but like everybody was different, and people were, as my sister says, quirksmobiles, and we were too, and it is okay. So
Yeah, there is no stereotype. There is no.
I mean, there is a stereotype,
I mean, there
but
is
like-
kind of, but I mean, there's no, atypical. This. I'm using really weird, stupid words, but the fact is, there's no prototype. Is what
Yeah.
I was getting to.
Yeah.
There's no prototype worker,
Okay.
and we saw it first up close, and we actually embodied that reality.
Maybe it's that most people don't get to see them all in one place, like
it's
we
true.
do.
It's true.
I mean,
But I mean,
Yeah.
we were having a conversation the other day while we were exercising, and I look at Scripture sometimes, and I'm trying to place myself, I'm trying to see my life through some character through the Bible,
Yeah.
and I think that's a good thing sometimes because it helps me to keep the Bible and how God interacts with those people relevant to
Yeah.
me. But there's a danger in that because that person is that person. That's not me.
Yeah.
And God is working out my story and my life according to me.
Yeah.
And it can look sometimes like other people's stuff, but it's not because it's me. And so, yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with doing the research, looking at your skills and your abilities. Look at some non-negotiables that you feel are non-negotiable. They could be negotiable, but you think they're non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth of whatever God is calling you to do.
Yeah.
But whatever it is He calls you to do, He will prepare you for that. And He will give you the grace and the strength to walk through that. But what He calls you to may not look anything like what He called this person to. And
Yeah.
yet the work and the call is still the same.
That's right.
So,
and I think we would say like a good balance for us was take your family into consideration. Don't use your family as an excuse.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Because you can say to yourself, because we're all geniuses at lying to ourselves, we can say, I'm just being cautious. I'm just trying to be a planner. I'm just trying to do, and there is a tipping point. And if you're listening to the Holy Spirit, He will nudge you. There's a tipping point where that can become an excuse to where you're like, yeah, I don't know if my child, And the truth is, there is an element of jumping off a cliff. There's an element of jumping off a cliff and being like, Lord, I'm trusting I'm not going to hit the bottom, and all these people with me. And so if you think you can reason your way out of that feeling, I'm not sure you can. Mm-hmm. I think we all, again, is there a right time to have a baby? Obviously, if you're married. But like, people will say, I don't know if we can afford kids. The answer is you can't. No one can. Mm-hmm. No one can. Elon Musk can afford kids. Everyone else is going to be like, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And so it's kind of the same with answering that call.
So we have not touched on half.
I did warn Alex about this list of questions that
Like,
we
I'm not-
weren't
I
didn't even
gonna
know about this
touch it.
list.
Forget the list of questions.
Okay. All right.
We didn't even touch on half of the Vanderpool story, but we touched on a very 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful, and I'm so thankful to hear that. We'll end with part one of this conversation with this question. Was it worth it?
Oh, 1,000 bajillion% yes.
Yes. I'm reminded of the Andrew Peterson song, Is He Worthy?
Oh, gosh. Yes.
Which always chokes me up.
Yeah.
Was it worth it? Is he worthy?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure your husband got to sing that song
Yes.
here
Yes,
at
and I
Christmas.
cried.
I did.
Do you want to do that
Eve?
again for us right now?
No. But thank you for asking.
He's
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of singing right now.
Yeah. No, it is.
Yeah.
There is no question in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, if our kids were sitting here, they would say, yes, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the bad stuff that went down, it's part of the story, and it was worth it.
Yeah.
You can't separate the two. It was a whole story, and it was worth it.
And I will readily admit, because this is just the way my brain thinks, we were not asked to make we were not tasked with the losses that some of our friends endured. And so I don't even feel worthy to answer that question to a certain extent, because we did go through some difficult times, but we came back with all our kids, and they're healthy, and they loved it. Sometimes people's stories are thornier, and sometimes they're asked to give up things that that they never wanted to give up. And so I just want to bear that in mind and say, I think in many cases, if you ask them, they would still say, yes, it was worth it.
Yeah.
I just know that the things that we suffered were light and momentary. All of us, that's the case for all suffering, but like light and momentary compared to some people's losses.
Absolutely.
But even here in the United States, it's the
Yeah.
same. Like, you hear things and you're like, oh my, like, please, Lord, no, don't let that happen to me.
Yeah.
But it was worth it.
I think the thing that I hear in your story over and over is the very last words Jesus said in the Great Commission, right? Mm-hmm. And lo, I am with you always. There's no way that you guys could have ever done that had that truth not been completely evident in your hearts, right?
Absolutely.
There's no way that any of us could do anything that we do without that truth evident in our hearts.
That's so good. Guys, thank you all for joining us.
No, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And again, we're gonna dive deeper into the Vanderpool story in near episodes. But again, thank you for putting your yes on the table. Thank you for going from short term to long term. Thank you for taking your family with you. And we are better. This faith family is better. Alex is better because you all said yes.
Oh,
And
Thank
so
you.
thank
Very
you so
nice.
much. And as we conclude each and every episode, we're going to ask Miss Hannah if she would read our tagline for the Adventure Podcast.
from our neighborhoods to the nations, may we proclaim the name of Jesus.